great. So I can see we see the slide here. Today's presentation is called Advanced Analytics with Power BI. And of course, with this technology, feel free to ask any questions in the chat window. I won't be addressing questions immediately, but we'll have some time at the end of today's, toward the end of today's presentation for us to answer some questions or comments or observations that you may have. My name is Mark Tabladillo. I am a lead data scientist for Microsoft. I work in Microsoft services, so I'm client facing and I work from home, travel to clients. I work inside Microsoft's data and AI domain, and that's just a collection of technologies that encompass our data products such as SQL Server, Azure Data Lake, Cosmos, and then any of our AI technologies, which include cognitive services, and Spark now, and also Azure ML Studio. So there are many technologies represented by our group. We have a variety of people with depth topic areas in these various technologies. My personal background has been 20 years now in analytics, covering different technologies. And by the way, I will be also showing my connection. I'm on Twitter. I'm also on LinkedIn. Love to be connecting, and also love to have you follow me on Twitter. I'm often tweeting on AI topics, including today. Okay, so here's my, yes, I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter there. I also have some videos at Winelect now, and those topics include Spark and HD Insight and deep learning. So those are paid content. However, you'll be able to see the intro for free if you're interested in that. But I want to focus today on this particular outline. And first, we're going to talk about Microsoft's perspective on the advanced analytics development, the team data science process. The reason we're talking about that in a Power BI presentation is that as we have been developing more expertise and experience now working with so many enterprise clients in the area of advanced analytics, AI, data science, we feel it's important now to have a perspective on how to organize those projects. And the word team here is very central because we're not just thinking about the data scientist, we're also thinking about the business analyst, we're thinking about the project manager, we're thinking about the solution architect. There's a number of different personas involved in making a solution happen. And if you happen to be in an enterprise project where perhaps you are the business analyst, and we'll consider that right now the focused persona for today's presentation, you may need to work with a solution architect, for example, to be able to deliver those results in a Power BI dashboard. Second topic, I'm going to talk about the general options for advanced analytics. We're not going to sit on any of those for any long length of time, but we do have the entire slide deck already posted on SlideShare, so you'll be able to look at that if Azure is new to you. I have been, since joining Microsoft in 2016, been working on almost exclusively Azure, sometimes on-prem, but Azure has been part of every project that I have worked on in the last 2 years, and will be important now as so many organizations are looking to have new value solutions with Azure. And of course, Power BI is part of that process. Now with Power BI dashboard available through the web. The focus of today's presentation, this third area here, what specific native advanced analytics capabilities are available in Power BI. I'm going to talk about 6 of them, and I'm going to give some insights into what they are and how to think about them. The most important thing now is just to frame them in a framework for your mind to be able to think about what these technologies are and how you might use them. We are not going to do so much of a step-by-step on creating a dashboard. However, there will be specific links to use some generic demo dashboards that are already available on Microsoft.com for you to use. You can use them to learn how to use these technologies. And also I find the demo dashboards are useful if you are on a team and you're wanting to show them what's possible in Power BI. It's so easy just to grab one of these demos and use it yourself. Use it for your team, use it for one person that you're trying to explain what Power BI does, and I'll be doing that myself. And then finally, I'm going to end on some ideas about pairing Power BI with other technologies. I found even some of our most complicated solutions, we typically will use now Power BI as our default front-end viewer for any type of advanced analytics projects that we may be doing. So even if we're using Azure ML Studio and we're developing models, we will often land that model information in a SQL Azure database, and as a default, do Power BI. If we do something more complicated, in addition to Power BI, we might have some custom app development. Okay, so going to the next slide here. Today, we're not going to do any data science modeling training. However, I'm going to recommend our MPP, which stands for Microsoft Professional Program. We have one for data science. We have one for artificial intelligence. These courses are free. There's a paid option if you want to get a certificate. And then there's other courses. So now these courses are actually a collection of different courses that are online, and you can see what those are and perhaps use them to supplement your own background and training. I've been doing them myself. And the second one here, artificial intelligence, is a new rapid area of growth and represents areas where I continue to learn to be current with our current technology. Microsoft also has certifications in the areas of Azure and data science if one is considering working either for Microsoft or a Microsoft partner. And then Microsoft also has excellent documentation and a lot of tutorials and walkthroughs, and including Channel 9 has so many videos on the content. Of course, we also have content here at PASS, and we have of course, the virtual groups are producing content for YouTube. So don't overlook that, all past presentations for this particular group. Okay, I'm now going to move into this area of team data science process. And the first important word here is team. Team means it was created for the enterprise. And when I was in graduate school and learning advanced analytics, it's often true that one will need to be doing a lot of this processing or complete a project on your own. So a lot of the steps I'm going to be showing for a team data science process, again, can be scaled down to one person. However, I found in organizations and enterprise situations, and certainly for Power BI, using that on Azure, we do need to take a team approach. Teams are more successful than individuals, and especially for complex projects. And when we say data science here, we're not just talking about data science per se, we're talking about machine learning, we're talking about artificial intelligence, really any type of advanced analytics. There's a link here that goes to the web that gives a more thorough explanation. And today we're not going to focus on all the parts here, but what I would like to focus on is the center of the diagram here. You see 4 circles: business understanding, data acquisition and understanding, modeling, and then deployment. And this whole team data science process, this really is just a reformulation of the scientific method. And without getting to the details of how this helps project management, in short, one of these life cycles exists for every type of experimental project. So if you're on a team and you might be the business analyst, again, we're focusing on that persona today, and you might be working with a data scientist over here doing modeling. You may be working with a data engineer team doing the data acquisition understanding. And then maybe some business architects or project managers that are managing the business narrative of a project. Those folks are all working at the same time on a project in kind of this iterative process. And the goal here is for deployment. And often Power BI is considered part of a deployment strategy and part of a deliverable, which might even be named during process. Okay, so I would encourage you to look at that team data science process to think more about how to structure the analytics process. Now I'm going to take a quick tour through the advanced analytics on Azure. And we've seen a lot of new innovation in the last few years. It's important to know maybe what some of the high-level titles are, without going to details so that we know what we're talking about. The term artificial intelligence as a topic really dates back to the 20th century. I don't know the exact starting date, but it was quite popular as far as a research topic. It really fell out of favor, became a background topic during the age now here of machine learning, where we started getting into algorithms like support vector machine, which really dominated a lot of the contests, especially in this period right here, 2000 to 2010. Pretty much a lot of the modeling contests were won by support vector machine. Now, personally, and even in my practice, and I was active during this entire time working on enterprise analytics, I would not just use support vector machine, I would use so many of the other algorithms. And for those of you who've used analysis services data mining, the neural network was always in there. There has been a breakthrough since 2010 now in deep learning. And so now the idea now is to be able to go forward having advanced analytics as an option. And let me go on mute here because I'm going to need to close the door. Okay, sorry about that. We just had some eager people just standing outside my door. So I'm going to go to this next stage. Now, what's important now with Power BI and advanced analytics, some of what AI will provide will be able to be doing it right inside Power BI. However, Power BI may just be the dashboard interface toward a very sophisticated solution. So that's, I'm putting in other words what I had said earlier. When I work on enterprise projects, we may be doing some complicated things behind the scenes, and then we're using Power BI as a partner technology to be able to show those results. The innovations now are in 3 areas where Microsoft's making technology investments, and they are known as Azure AI Services, Azure Infrastructure, and then tooling on the right. So what are we talking about? Azure AI Services, we're talking about technologies such as the cognitive services and the bot service, and then we may also be talking about Azure Machine Learning. And again, 2 ways to think about how Power BI helps people. One is to directly give the information that may come, for example, from a bot, from a cognitive service, and just provide that inside a Power BI dashboard. Or Power BI could be used as a monitoring tool to monitor, for example, a bot service, to monitor cognitive services and how they're being used. There's 2 ways to think about how Power BI can be used, not just to display the content, but also might provide some telemetry on the context of how a bot service might be used, for example. Okay, going forward. Okay, Azure Infrastructure. And this area, has been traditionally referred to as the data area. So you see the data solutions on the left, and we have Cosmos DB, SQL DB, SQL DW, Data Lake. And then on the right side, some of the exciting technologies now in Spark, the data science virtual machine, batch AI, IoT Edge. And I heard a new phrase this week. There's a heavy edge and there's the light edge. So the heavy edge is like Azure Stack, and a light edge might be an IoT device. So we're going to have some new technologies and data sources involved here. Again, Power BI can be used in the sense of, in this case, either to be a consumer of some of these data technologies or just monitoring how they're being used. And on the right side, in case anyone in this audience has not heard, Microsoft these days is very open source friendly. Of course, we saw that here with Spark now, and there was an announcement that Spark now is coming to SQL Server 2019. But on the right side, we see great enthusiasm for so many open source technologies, including Python, R. Microsoft now has a Linux distribution, and Microsoft has also been working closely with the open source community to genuinely make contributions in that area. So in case you have not heard that, about 41% of the virtual machines on Azure, I think, no, actually it's the 44%. 44%, that's the last number I heard, are running Linux. So it shows Microsoft's commitment now to open source. And on the right side too, in the bottom right, deep learning frameworks. Well, deep learning frameworks don't have their own native visualizers, And so Power BI could be an assist to helping understand even what's happening inside a deep learning project. Okay, and again, these slides are available for you to look at. What are these services? What do they do? You know, what is a bot service? I'm often working with clients and talking about what these bots are. I was recently talking to a government client, and I'll tell you the general idea. They want to be able to build a bot that would have information delivered from different agencies. So perhaps if they had child services, they had, you know, business services such as the tax department, and perhaps they had first responders. So, you know, they're thinking about, can we combine our, you know, FAQs to help people find the correct government agency? And I think that's an excellent application thought for bots. Cognitive services are the consumable technologies that are available, and I think developers will find these of particular interest. Often they're just sending information to the cloud and they're getting JSON packages back. The list continues to expand. Every time I've had to learn about one of these technologies, I found them very workable, easy to use. Now, there's complicated mathematics behind them. However, as far as a consumer or even a developer, they're very workable and something that you would want to look at. Again, as being part of a larger solution where Power BI is being used. I had mentioned Azure ML Studio, and then, you know, some of these technologies here can be run inside Docker. And then as we go forward, we're going to see more of these other technologies running on some very high-end platforms in the back end. And then, like I said, Power BI can be the front end for being able to share this information. So these are some of the technologies, and you know, again, we're not going to park on any one of these slides because we do want to move forward into the Power BI. So this is where we want to focus right here. Advanced analytics in Power BI in these 6 topics. So these are the 6 topics of focus for this particular presentation. All right, topic 1. Topic 1, I'm calling pairing Power BI with Azure Machine Learning, and specifically Azure Machine Learning Studio, now that that phrase has come to mean several things on the back end. What I'm showing here is an architecture, and there's a link at the bottom, and this architecture was developed a few years ago, and I'm going to describe here, just going to walk through the idea here, what happens. Now, a local computer here right in the center is assuming a Power BI desktop client here working in the center. And then as you see, R is working here. And then of course we have our gateway technology that allows us to connect on the right side to the Power BI service. But let's walk through this. So let's start here in the SQL Azure. And we know it's SQL Azure because it's got the little cloud symbol down here. And what we're saying here is that the Power BI desktop is going to extract maybe through ODBC. And then here R can be used to call the web service. So this would be Azure ML Studio at the bottom. And that could be used to write predictions back to where? SQL Azure. And then SQL Azure can be also used to extract the predictions here and then publish on the right side to a Power BI service, and then scheduling a refresh. Now, just as a development scenario, this idea is not bad. And I've shown this particular architecture to several audiences now, and different folks have seen the same thing I do. And in fact, you know, this particular scenario of architecture, this will work, and perhaps this is an architecture that would work for you. But I would think of it as more of a development type of scenario where someone's sitting on the desktop and they might be doing some experimentation. Now, in an enterprise environment, I actually have a slightly different recommendation, and that would be to use Azure Data Factory. So we're not going to go into what that exactly would look like, but I have a link here to be able to look at, you know, to follow up on that topic. Because the reason is because you go back to this architecture, the whole setup here is dependent on something running on someone's local computer. So you would not want to be doing this on a regular basis for a production system. You would want Power BI desktop really to be on the side, and then you would want the orchestration to be done with Azure Data Factory. I'm pointing this out now. This is not an incorrect architecture. This does work, but the important thing here is as we're going forward, and I know so many folks in this audience have enterprise experience or may have used Azure Data Factory in the past. As we go forward, you're going to have to think through not just what works, but what is the best, perhaps, architecture for your situation. So that's the first thing I want to show. So we have an example here. You can look up, how there's actually the how-to on this link of how to make this particular architecture work. But going forward, I'm going to be recommending people look at Azure Data Factory as a production solution. Okay, second topic here has to do with R integration. Now, R integration is no longer beta, and we see some links here for both the desktop and the online service. And it shows you how those work. Now, online is going to have certain packages, and then desktop is going to be using your own client on a local machine. Now, the idea here with R integration, the design is for Power BI to perhaps do some lightweight ETL and then show a visualization. So the focus being on that visualization. Now, I call this almost a complementary way that SQL Server 2017 works. The SQL Server 2017 also pairs with R, but the emphasis there is not about the visualization. The emphasis there is about the ETL. So if you wanted to do ETL or a lot of ETL, I would not recommend doing that inside Power BI, like Power BI Desktop, because that's not the intention of that tool. And anyway, every time you touch the graph, it's always refreshing, and we're going to see that in a later demo. So it's really intended just to show some lightweight visuals, and especially in use cases where you may be in an organization where they're already using R and they want to be able to see maybe a prototype or something, how that actual R code will look if it's used in a more, again, production scenario. So I think that it's not bad for prototyping, and especially for situations where you're trying to figure out what should be on a dashboard. But be aware that there are some limitations. Now this is actually the full list of limitations here. I'm not intending to read through all of them. One of the ones I'll read actually is first row here. It's R visual for plotting is limited to 150,000 rows. Well, obviously, not all data is in that range. So if that is not your case, this would not be the recommended solution. So there might be other ways to approach your challenge, and certainly R has many ways to touch Azure these days, not just Power BI. But just be aware that using R in Power BI doesn't mean it just automatically will do everything possible that R can do. There's a link there at the bottom for you to be able to research that topic more. And again, I'm not going to show a demo on how to do that. I will show an R visual later, though. All right, now we're going to go to topic 3 of the topics that I am going to show today. This one is one that I am going to encourage everyone in this presentation to go do this after the talk. Try this out for yourself. And it's based on the customer profitability sample. So that's one of the sample data sets that's available. And as I go to the other screen, hopefully it will, let's see it catch up here. So I have the link there that goes to the website, and you can go see what this customer profitability sample is. And if you see on the left side here with my bubble, I show that there's a number of different samples that are available. These are the samples or demos that I had referred to earlier that are already on the web that you can download, that you can show other people. And for some of you who are Power BI users, you'll see that the Power BI team continues to refresh the list of available samples. This particular one, the date here I see is June 2018, which I assume is the release date. It could be released perhaps earlier, but it does date to this year. So this is a new, relatively new demo, and let me show it now here. I'm going to go to my copy in Power BI Desktop. So you'll see the intro screen. Again, this notebook is down, or this Power BI sample is downloadable, and when you open it, you'll have the information here that's shown on the screen, and it will match what shows on the web page. So you see on the right side here what the fields are. We have a fact table, and we have different so many columns. One thing I like about this demo, in past years, Microsoft had produced some demos that were really too basic. Some of them were too basic. I think this one's a pretty good one. So we got a number of tables here, and provides a more chance to have a rich look at customer profitability. But what I'm going to focus on is not the desktop client. Let's surf over to, let me make this a little smaller so that I can see it. I need to still be able to see my client here. All right. So where I am right now is I am on app.powerbi.com, and I'm inside my account. So we're on the Power BI service in Azure. And where we are is we are looking at my workspace. If you see on here on the left side, my workspace, and then going across the top, we're focusing on this fourth tab here, data sets. And we see here the customer profitability sample. That's the same sample that we're talking about right now. And there's different things you can do with this data. And right now, there's a option when you press this. It's called the ellipses. It's 3 periods, ellipses. So I left click that, and there's an option here that right now it says View Insights, but earlier today, before I re-triggered it, it said Get Quick Insights. Get Quick Insights. So I already did that. So since I already did that, I can go straight to viewing what those insights are. So what are we talking about? Behind the scenes, this is an automated service. It's going to go through this data set, and it's going to look for any interesting trends or patterns. Now, not all of them might be interesting to you personally if you're looking at this project. However, what is interesting is just to run this automated service and then see what it produces. Okay, so right now I'm going to go down to View Insights, and let's see what comes out. Okay, now some of these, again, just to set the expectation here, some of these conclusions may seem very trivial or not useful, and that's okay, right? This is what, if you think about it on the back end, that some, machine learning algorithm or some bot is now giving us these results after looking through our Power BI data set. Some of these might be interesting, some not. What it's produced here is all these different little cards, and you go down the screen, this is, it allows you to go ahead and pin them if you want to save them, or, here, make it full screen. So you can just choose, what you want to do with that. And I'm going to have to go in here, hang on a second. I'm going to have to make this, do a little resizing here so I can still see my scroll bars. Okay. All right, so let's look at what some of them say. This first one here is a count of city, and on the right side, it gives me the explanation, US has noticeably more city. So this now, these are by country or region. So what it means is most of the cities are in the United States. That's the way we would perhaps say it. That might be an insight, might be something new that we didn't know, but it's going to look at the entire data set and say, well, look, most of this data is coming from the US. I hover over it and I see the number 181. Then I hover over Canada, I see 6. I hover over Australia, I see 2. Great Britain, 1. So behind the scenes, what's happening is machine learning is looking actually at the variance of this output by country, and then producing that as an output. Let's go to the next one here. North and East, so this is total revenue by region. North and East have noticeably more total revenue. Now that might be important. So what it's saying here is the North region and then the East region together have noticeably more total revenue perhaps than all the other areas. And some of them are blank. So, we do see missing data in this particular demo sample workbook. And I like that. I like seeing missing data because that represents, real life and data sets I actually see. So that might be interesting. This is the count of products and the count of name by date. There's a correlation between the products and the name. So this is how many products there are and how many names there might be representing those products. All right, now this one, I think this one is entertaining to me, just the way the bot expressed this one. So this is the count of executives by division. And this says here, minor accounts for the majority of executives. So I was amused by that because minor is the majority. I found that funny. All right, minor is the majority. So minor here accounting for 61%. And these are the divisions, and this division is called minor. So that's just how it turned out. Sum of material cost has outliers. So we have here some sums coming over the dates, and then this here as an outlier. So that might be something worth looking at. What is that outlier? Let me just skip down here. US has noticeably more division. So that's a count of division by country. Again, this is kind of a odd way to express it in regular English, but one could always just take that and change it. So anyway, what's important here is it gives us, and I think the number's 32 that it will give as far as different graphs. And you could just go through and look at some of the different graphs that are automatically made. It gives somebody a head start at thinking through even, let's say a dashboard was already made, maybe perhaps how to improve that dashboard, because we do want to have, what's really helpful on dashboards is to have graphs that show some amount of variance, because variance gives insight on what's actually going on. And even in a new dashboard construction, they also suggest perhaps ways to think about the data. And although you might not pick this exact visualization, what it does, the way I would use this is just to look at what variables. Now, there's different words. You can use variable, attribute, column, feature. Those words, basically all mean the same thing. So on the left side here, just knowing what variables are being used might give a dashboard designer some insight into what could be additionally added based on that empirical analysis. Going back earlier, I talked about the team data science process. You might have a dashboard that's already pre-specified to be built. But what we're looking at here is we're looking at an empirical driven approach toward getting additional business understanding. Now, I always like to have business understanding before you even go into a project so that we already know what our objectives are and what are the boundaries and expected deliverables. However, it's also important to learn from the data. And this technology, Quick Insights, gives us an automated way to learn from the data. So this is something, again, rolling back to my deck, this topic is one I feel that people should try out the Quick Insights. Okay, let's go to the next topic. So this is topic 4. Again, we're looking at 6 different topics. And this topic is called clustering. This was introduced in November, meaning November 2017. And I'm going to be looking not just at the core technology that comes here, but also custom visual that comes from this particular web page. So let me go to that web page quickly. This is just one I found on the web, and it has a clustering visual Power BI solution that you could use. And let's just go to my dashboard. So here's my dashboard, and what I've used is this example called Europrotein. So it shows about, protein type data in Europe. We have countries here, and then we have information on eggs, fish, fruit and vegetable. And what happens on the right side is it gives us the opportunity to, and I think it's the upper right corner. No, actually, right now it's already clustered. But if I were going to do it from scratch, it would show me the opportunity to cluster that. So let me turn it off. Let me try to turn it off and just see what happens. All right. Okay. So you see here with the clustering off, I have the chance to take this two-way distribution. It's just a scatter plot. And my scatter plot's the average of milk and the average of fruit and vegetable by country. So that's what's on this graph. And if I go to the ellipses again, I can go to automatically find clusters. There's many ways to do clusters. There's no one specific right way to do them. And behind the scenes, uh, one will set parameters to be able to moderate how that's done. And that's generally what's true in any of the unsupervised techniques. But you can go through, automatically find clusters, and let me just do it now and see what it will do. So you bring up this cluster screen, and then name of cluster county clusters, and then I'm going to call this October 11 because that's today. And then you can put a description in here. Notice here on the number of clusters, it's going to say auto. Auto means, you decide how many groups. But if you want to override this, you can say, well, give me the best 3 groups, give me the best 2 groups, give me the best 5 groups. There is a limit, and I forget exactly what the number is. It might be around 10 to 15. But normally people will not want to make more clusters than that. So I click OK. Okay, so it says working on it. Cluck, cluck, cluck. Now, in my case, for this October 11th group, it's going to do 2 things. First of all, it will change my scatter plot by this new variable. And you'll notice on the right side, it added it as a calculated measure here on the right side. So you'll see what that was, and you can see other ones that I've put here in the past and earlier iterations. But on the left side now, so we have the countries here shown on a graph, but also I have the ability to look at these clusters. And, again, we have the hover over capability to be able to look at what country we're talking about, what is their cluster, and then what is their milk and fruit and vegetable. We put these 4 or these 1, 2, 3, 6 dots in the first cluster, and then a number of here in the second cluster, or that group, this group over here, and then the left group here in the lower left. So it made 4 groups. I imagine perhaps if we did it again and we made 2 groups, it might put all the top section together and all this bottom section together. It seems almost a trivial exercise with this many points, and then I'm roughly guessing, I'm looking at these groups, perhaps 6 by 4, 24 to 30 points. But what would happen if you had a graph of 200 or 300 and you wanted to put them into clusters and you wanted to do this type of nice coloration? Well, that's possible now with this automatic clustering. So that is what's the new technology. Again, I encourage you to do that with a scatter plot if you want to try out that technology. It is an unsupervised algorithm behind the scenes, so it is technically a good application of machine learning. Now, what's happening on the left, and you saw, if you were looking or if the screen was coming through quickly enough, there was a little spinning box because this is the custom visual. So in this case, I have left and right are the same points. And the idea here is the one on the left is actually a custom visual connected to R. And then on the one on the right is the native clustering that comes out of Power BI. So you notice that just looking at this, obviously the 2 results are not equivalent. I mean, they're similar, but they're not identical. And they're just 2 different ways perhaps to look at it. Even if I hover over on the left side, and it does give me some opportunity to see what those different points are, and it also gave me this dotted line. You will see in the case of R visuals, you might see some more sophisticated ways to represent what a cluster is. So if I compare the two sides, so what are the advantages and disadvantages? So let's talk about the left side, what the advantages are. The left side, the advantages are perhaps getting some more sophisticated lines and dotted lines here on the graph. That's clearly one advantage. This is what I'm showing the screen is not exhaustive. I mean, so there's other ways to do a clustering visual, but it's just giving you one example of what's possible. But the second thing is that, the downside here is that every time I come back to this screen, it has to recalculate it. So, depending on how much data you have, and of course you saw that earlier slide I had about R and how it works. So, one may not want to wait, necessary to have a recalculation done. If I just flip back and forth, I think it just comes back immediately. No, actually, yeah, it came back pretty much pretty fast. But sometimes if you leave the tab and you come back and then, go through the recalculation. The right side, what's nice about that is it's fully integrated with all the other Power BI visualizers. So it's very fast and responsive, and it'll do the filtering. And so if you had this on a more complicated dashboard, you could still have all those capabilities to be able to touch and manipulate on the right side, and you'd see a very fast response working with the other Power BI visuals. Meanwhile, the one on the left, it's not integrated. So I can touch, points here, and it's not going to change anything on the graph or, allow me to do that type of filtering. So you see there's pluses and minuses of going both ways, but we see two different ways to approach the same clustering task. Okay, so that's topic 4. I do have some examples here of where you use clustering, and I put this in here because I think clustering is underused by a lot of people. Many people will make their own groups. They make them regionally, and maybe if you're in the United States, you're making sales regions and you do it by geography. That seems very logical, and sure, keep on doing that. But there's other reasons why one would want to use clustering, and that would be for us to be looking at the data and let the data suggest what should be in the same group. So we have some ideas here for inventory categorization or detecting anomalies here. So we have some examples here, and I got this list from this particular blog, and there's so many other places to look on the internet of how and why to use clustering. So that's yet another way to get insight on your data. Topic 5 has to do with grouping and binning. And of course, I'm not going to show the demo, but you can take on the graph and you can have it regroup categories together. Now, I consider this, something that's more advanced because it's what I will often do even as a prelude to doing more advanced modeling. What is interesting to me here is the ability to be able to do that automatically, using the Power BI interface. And I'm not going to demonstrate that, but you can try that with a bar graph and put those bars together and see how it can combine them. And it would just be making a new measure. The final topic here is common data model. This is currently in preview, but let me outline the use case. Now, if you look at the deck, there's going to be a lot of slides on this. We are not going to talk about all the slides. What's more important, I put all the slides in there so that you can study them later and see a worked out example. But here's the idea. The idea is if we had a common schema, then we may be able to have an automated way to standardize the insights from that common schema. In talking with some people, where I think this is going to be rolled out first, and we already see it, is for people who are using Dynamics. So if you are putting Power BI in front of Dynamics, you will definitely want to look at this technology that is now under preview. And the idea here will be to use the information you have in Dynamics and then perhaps get some automated insights. Very similar to the quick insights we saw earlier. However, it's got an additional assumption, and the additional assumption is that standardized schema. Now you say, well, what happens if I'm not in Dynamics? Okay, so there is a mapping way, and I'm going to just kind of go down the list here. So Power BI Insights apps, this is going to be out of the box insights that are going to be shown based on that common data schema. There is preview coming second quarter of 2018. Of course, we're already there, and you can just look at some of the links I've given here for what these insights are going to provide. Now, the demo that is showing here, these are actually inside the slide deck. So we're actually looking at slides. We're not actually looking at a demo. But in this particular demo, it shows going to a specific data source or template, connecting to your data source, and then going down, choosing your tables. You get a data preview. Again, these are all slides. These are not actual demo that I'm going through, but there's in there. And then what's important here is this little mapping exercise. So what happens here is the idea is you pick your tables, you have your fields, and then what you're going to do is you're going to map them to your own situation. That's the idea. You have a common data model, you have certain fields and certain names, and you're mapping them to the schema that you're already using. So all that here is shown just in pictures, and I encourage you to use that, especially if you're a Dynamics user. Last topic here is on advanced analytics architectures. And what do I want to say? What I want to say is to pair Power BI with your data warehouse, your advanced analytics, and your real time. What is real time? We're talking about streaming. And I had been suggesting that throughout this talk today, that Power BI is an excellent visualizer even for the most advanced Azure architectures, even to be a consumer not just of the content, but also the context. Context meaning how the architecture is being processed, giving the producers some insights on how Azure is being used. And then what's important here, if you're looking for examples of architectures, go to this link here, Azure AI Gallery, and I think I have it in the other window. I do. So let's look at that quickly. We have some solutions already published here by industry. The ones called out are retail, manufacturing, banking, and healthcare. Granted, the focus of these solutions really is not Power BI, but often you'll see in any of these solutions, often Power BI will be named as a technology connecting to these scenarios. Again, I don't think the future is going to be, oh, everything can be in Power BI just because R is there, or even now Python is in preview. So, we're not trying to, we want to let Power BI be best at what it does, which is the dashboarding, which is the interactive features, the filtering, the visualizations, and then the heavy ETL and data lifting and even the heavy data modeling. You want to move that into another environment. You want that to either be running like perhaps on-prem, could be done with SQL Server 2017, or in the cloud. You have a number of choices between Azure ML Studio and then Spark and some of the other choices. So really it's about having Power BI shine where it's so strong with the visualizations either being delivered to desktop or to mobile. Okay, and that is what I want to stop with. We do have my 5 minutes. So Michael, if you want to come back on audio and perhaps point out any questions or that you may have seen.
Yes. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions here. So Nasrat wanted to know, is there any more detailed resources like video tutorials with demos that basically walk through the sort of some of the workflow, especially around that first point, your point one.
Point one. Okay, and then let's go back to point one just to remember what that was. And that was about the Azure ML Studio. I'll show again on the screen.
Yes.
Okay. And let's go there because I didn't actually open it. Okay. In this particular demo, and if you click the link that's in there, again, notice the date, 2016. And already, here we are 2 years later, and we're already suggesting that today you might want to optimize this architecture a little different. This whole page right here is a tutorial. So it does show exactly how to go through that example. And interesting too, you can read the comments or add your own comments in the bottom once you log in and see how that example works through. Notice where this is, and that is the Power BI blog. And I'm sure other presenters have shown this blog, but we see here, and again, let's look at the most recent example, because I think this even touches on what I had shown in this part of the presentation, the custom visual. Look at this, October 11th, just produced today. We have a new blog entry here on deep dive into the custom visuals. So I would certainly look in here and also search inside the blog, which is where this is coming from. Example number 1 did come from the Power BI blog, and see what's available.
Great. Okay, Alex asked, does Power BI have any predictive analytics built in, such as like shoe size is a strong predictor for height?
Correct. So the way to think about that, when we were doing the Quick Insights is a web service. Let me go back here. So it does not, this service does not run in the desktop client. It runs on Azure, and it is behind the scenes advanced analytics to be able to show those correlations of interest. And I showed this earlier on the panel that showed those 32 sample cards. And then inside desktop, for example, there is the opportunity to write some scripts. And I had shown that earlier with this particular custom visual. Behind the scenes, this is there's R code behind it, but also one could go through here, like I have started to do in the second panel, and Python now is available, and you can do some coding here in the bottom. Obviously, you want to do lightweight coding here. The use case for desktop client is to have mostly the visuals. And so I recommend and suggest, especially for the large data sets, that the ETL, especially feature generation and maybe outlier detection, all that type of workload, be moved to SQL or another environment, and then maybe just use Power BI as a consumer.
Great. Just on that, you might, I know Power BI has the correlation plot in the store.
Yes.
I guess that's sort of an indicator, isn't it?
Yes, and it depends what you think about modeling. And let me give my general viewpoint on modeling. What is the easiest model? To me, one of the easiest models is taking an average. So taking an average of a variable, to me, is a model. So one does not need to do a regression or correlation, to start with, where does modeling start? To me, modeling starts at any other mathematical transformation. So there's really not to me, there's kind of a fuzzy line between what is a mathematical formula and then maybe what is, what we would call machine learning, perhaps where we have to do iterations. And we would need to use calculus because we're looking for the roots of the equation to be able to find where it crosses, that axis, and be able to determine weights and, those types of mathematical manipulations. But the exciting thing, we see here, R script visual now being dropped into the visualization, and depends on how folks are using it.
Okay, great. We're basically out of time. There's a very quick question: can you provide a pointer to an architecture of using Data Factory and cognitive services feeding into Power BI?
Yes, the answer is yes. And so if you look again the Azure AI Gallery, I would go right into here. And you know what? I always believe when you go into here, you're just going to be lucky. But you see, now, first of all, let me point something out. Some of these are, you see who produced them. When it says Microsoft, it means Microsoft officially produced them. Mary Wall, I know as a fact, is a Microsoft employee like myself. And so, I know, where this is coming from. And then, then there's other quality producers, just because it doesn't say Microsoft doesn't mean it's not good. But just know that you as an individual can publish here to the gallery. And then for as far as solutions, I would just go in here and start looking at, what some of these solutions are. Some of them have the architecture on the front page. And again, I'm not knowing one immediately from memory that has Azure Data Factory as part of that solution. But I would suggest folks look through here. In fact, I'm not going to even try, going in this search bar to look for things. But go here to Azure AI Gallery and look around and see what you can find on those projects.
All right, that's great. Thanks so much, Mark. Okay, so we're out of time, guys. We just want to thank Mark for coming to talk to us today. We've really enjoyed it. There will be we have a $50 Amazon gift card as a prize if you would like to take the survey after this course. As you sign out of On Time Now, it'll basically just bring out a little survey for you to fill in. I just had a correction to a statement I made earlier. Pass does not start on the 3rd, it actually starts on the 5th. All right, well, thanks, guys, and we'll see you all next time. Cheers.
Thanks, Michael.
Cheers, Mark. Thanks a lot.